The story of Ukraine and Russia begins in the fertile lands of Eastern Europe. Here, over 1,000 years ago, a vibrant civilization took root. This was Kievan Rus'. Founded in the 9th century, its heart beat in Kyiv, the city of golden domes. Vikings, known as Varangians, played a role in its formation, forging trade routes. They navigated the vast rivers, connecting Scandinavia to the Byzantine Empire. This created a prosperous and powerful federation of East Slavic tribes. It was a realm of burgeoning culture, law and faith, a beacon in its time. Kievan Rus' was more than just a state. It was a cultural hearth. From its embrace, the spiritual and societal foundations of several future nations would emerge. Its rulers, like Volodymyr the Great, made choices that shaped destinies. He adopted Orthodox Christianity in 988. This act forever linked the region to Byzantium's rich traditions. Laws were codified, art flourished, and chronicles were written. The magnificent St. Sophia Cathedral in Kyiv stands as a testament to this era. It speaks of a sophisticated society, deeply connected to the wider European world and its spiritual currents. This shared ancestry is a complex legacy. Both modern Ukraine and Russia trace their lineage back to Kievan Rus'. It is a point of historical connection, often invoked yet diversely interpreted. For Ukrainians, Kyiv is the undisputed mother city, the wellspring of their distinct identity. For Russia, Kievan Rus' is also a foundational element, a part of a narrative that sees Moscow as its eventual successor. The interpretation of this shared past has become a battleground. It is a story used to unite, but also, tragically, to divide and justify claims of dominance over ancient lands. The golden age of Kievan Rus', however, was not eternal. Internal princely rivalries began to fragment its unity. Then, from the east, came a devastating storm, the Mongol invasions of the 13th century. Kyiv, the magnificent capital, was sacked in 1240. Its glory was diminished, its power broken. This cataclysm irrevocably altered the political map of Eastern Europe. While Kyiv struggled to recover, other centers of power began to rise from the ashes. This period of devastation marked a profound turning point, paving the way for new trajectories for the East Slavic peoples. As Kievan Rus' fractured and weakened under Mongol dominion, new centers of power emerged. Among them, a small principality to the northeast began its patient, relentless climb. This was Moscow. Initially a minor player, its rulers proved adept at navigating the complex politics of the Golden Horde. They collected tribute for the Mongols, gradually consolidating their own strength. While Ukrainian lands fell under the influence of Lithuania and Poland, Moscow steadily expanded its territory. It cast itself as the unifier of the Rus' lands, a new center of gravity. By the 15th century, the Grand Duchy of Moscow had grown formidable. Ivan III, the Great, renounced Mongol overlordship. He laid the foundations for a centralized Russian state. Moscow began to see itself as the Third Rome, heir to Byzantium's spiritual and imperial legacy. This ideology fueled its expansionist ambitions. Ukrainian lands, rich in resources and historical significance, became a key target. The narrative of reuniting ancient Rus' lands provided a powerful justification for Moscow's westward drive. This was the dawn of an empire that would profoundly shape Ukraine's future. Over the subsequent centuries, much of what is modern Ukraine gradually fell under Russian imperial control. The 18th century, under rulers like Catherine the Great, saw the decisive absorption of vast Ukrainian territories. The Cossack Hetmanate, a semi-autonomous Ukrainian state, was dismantled. Its autonomy was extinguished. Periods of intense Russification followed. The Ukrainian language was suppressed, deemed a mere dialect of Russian. Ukrainian culture was marginalized, its distinct identity denied. The empire sought to erase Ukrainian distinctiveness to meld it into a single monolithic Russian identity. This imperial domination was not merely political, it was deeply cultural and psychological. The Tsarist regime actively worked to impose its language, its administration, and its historical narrative. Ukrainian intellectuals and cultural figures who sought to preserve their heritage faced persecution. Taras Shevchenko, Ukraine's national poet, endured exile for his writings. Yet despite these pressures, the Ukrainian spirit did not die. It smoldered beneath the surface, a quiet defiance passed down through generations. The dream of autonomy and cultural revival remained, a testament to a resilient identity forged in adversity. The fall of the Russian Empire in 1917 offered a fleeting chance for Ukrainian independence. A Ukrainian People's Republic was declared. But this dream was short-lived. crushed amidst the chaos of revolution and civil war. Ultimately, Ukraine was incorporated into the newly formed Soviet Union. It became the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. While nominally a republic, true power resided firmly in Moscow. The early Soviet years brought some cultural concessions, a brief period of Ukrainization. This, however, proved to be a deceptive calm before a terrible storm. Under Joseph Stalin, the Soviet regime's grip tightened mercilessly. Ukraine, with its fertile black soil, was crucial to Stalin's plans for rapid industrialization. Collectivization of agriculture was enforced brutally. Peasants were stripped of their land and forced onto collective farms. Resistance was met with arrests, deportations, and executions. This policy sowed the seeds of an unimaginable catastrophe. The Ukrainian peasantry, the backbone of the nation, was systematically and deliberately targeted. Their way of life was shattered by a totalitarian state. Then came the Holodomor, the terror famine of 1932 to 1933. This was not a natural disaster, it was a man-made famine, meticulously engineered by Stalin's regime. Grain was requisitioned from Ukrainian villages with ruthless efficiency, even as people starved. Borders were sealed to prevent escape. Millions of Ukrainians perished. Men, women, and children died agonizing deaths from hunger. The Holodomor aimed to break the Ukrainian peasantry's resistance to collectivization. It also sought to crush any aspirations for Ukrainian national identity and independence. It remains a deep, unhealed wound, recognized by many as an act of genocide. The memory of the Holodomor is seared into Ukraine's collective consciousness. It is a stark reminder of the depths of Soviet cruelty and the price of Russian domination. For decades, the truth of this atrocity was suppressed by Moscow. Yet, survivors and their descendants kept the memory alive. It fueled a quiet determination to never again allow such a tragedy to befall their land. The Holodomor underscores the historical context of Ukraine's fight for self-determination. It is a fight against a power that once sought to starve it into submission, to erase its very existence. The iron grip of the Soviet Union began to weaken in the late 1980s. Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, inadvertently unleashed long-suppressed national aspirations. In Ukraine, a powerful independence movement, Rukh, gained momentum. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 and Moscow's disastrous handling of it further fueled anti-Soviet sentiment. It exposed the callous disregard the central government held for Ukrainian lives and land. The desire for self-rule, for control over their own destiny, became an unstoppable force. On August 24, 1991, following a failed coup in Moscow, Ukraine declared its independence. This historic act was overwhelmingly confirmed by a national referendum in December of that year. Over 90% of Ukrainians voted in favor of sovereignty. A new nation was born, or rather, reborn from the ashes of the Soviet Empire. The world watched as the blue and yellow flag was raised. There was immense hope, but also immense challenges. Decades of Soviet rule had left deep scars on the economy, the environment, and the national psyche. A new path had to be forged. The subsequent decades were a turbulent period of nation-building. Ukraine struggled to define its identity and its place in the world. Political life was often characterized by a tug-of-war. Some factions favored closer ties with Russia, bound by history, economy, and energy dependence. Others looked westward, aspiring to integrate with Europe and its democratic institutions. This internal division was frequently exploited by Moscow. It sought to maintain its influence over its former subject. The path to true sovereignty was fraught with obstacles, both internal and external. Key moments highlighted this ongoing struggle for Ukraine's soul. The 2004 Orange Revolution saw massive street protests against a fraudulent presidential election. Ukrainians demanded fairness and a European future. A decade later, in 2014, the Euromaidan protests erupted. Citizens again took to the streets, this time against a pro-Russian president's decision to scuttle an association agreement with the European Union. These events demonstrated a powerful civic consciousness. They showed a people determined to choose their own destiny, even in the face of immense pressure from their powerful neighbor. The Kremlin's gaze: why Russia covets Ukraine. Russia's persistent desire to dominate Ukraine stems from a complex web of motivations. Geopolitics plays a crucial role. Ukraine occupies a strategic position, a vast land bridge between Russia and Europe. For the Kremlin, a neutral or worse, a NATO-aligned Ukraine is perceived as a direct threat. It punctures the buffer zone Russia desires with the West. President Putin has repeatedly voiced concerns about NATO expansion. He views Ukraine's Western aspirations as an encroachment on Russia's sphere of influence, a challenge to its security calculus. Economic and strategic interests are also deeply intertwined. Ukraine possesses significant natural resources including coal and iron ore. Its fertile agricultural lands, the breadbasket of Europe, are immensely valuable. Furthermore, Ukraine offers crucial access to the Black Sea. The Crimean Peninsula, with its port of Sevastopol, has historically been home to Russia's Black Sea fleet. Control over Crimea and Ukraine's southern coast provides strategic maritime power. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 underscored the lengths Moscow would go to secure these assets, disregarding international law. Beyond a cold calculation of power and resources lies a potent cultural and historical narrative. President Putin has consistently promoted the idea that Ukrainians and Russians are one people. This narrative denies Ukraine's distinct national identity and sovereignty. It frames Ukraine as an artificial creation, an inseparable part of a Russian world, or Ruski Mir. This historical revisionism serves to legitimize Moscow's interference in Ukrainian affairs. It paints any Ukrainian move towards the West as a betrayal of a shared heritage, a historical aberration that must be corrected. Finally, a powerful nationalist ideology fuels the Kremlin's ambitions. For many in Russia's ruling elite, control over Ukraine is essential to restoring Russia's perceived greatness. It is about reclaiming imperial glory, whether Tsarist or Soviet. The loss of Ukraine after the Soviet collapse was seen by some as a profound humiliation. Reasserting dominance over Kyiv is viewed as a way to reverse this historical injustice. It is a key component in the vision of a resurgent Russia, a great power dictating terms on the world stage, with Ukraine firmly within its orbit. Echoes of brotherhood, cries of distinction, two intertwined destinies. The relationship between Ukrainians and Russians is one of profound complexity. There are undeniable commonalities, roots that stretch back to Kyiv Rus. Shared Orthodox Christian traditions have shaped both cultures for centuries. The East Slavic languages, Ukrainian and Russian, are related, sharing many linguistic features. This allows for a degree of mutual intelligibility, though they are distinct languages. For generations, families have been intertwined across borders. Marriages, friendships, and shared experiences created personal bonds that transcended political divides, at least in times of peace. These shared cultural elements, however, do not equate to a single identity. Significant differences define the two nations. The Ukrainian language, despite periods of suppression, evolved with its own unique characteristics. It became a powerful symbol of national identity. Ukrainian folk traditions, music, and literature express a distinct cultural soul. While Russia developed a highly centralized, autocratic political tradition, Ukraine historically harbored stronger democratic aspirations. The Cossack traditions, with their emphasis on elective leadership and individual freedoms, left a lasting imprint on the Ukrainian psyche. In recent decades, these differences have become more pronounced. Ukraine has increasingly looked towards Western Europe. It has embraced democratic values and aspired to join European institutions like the EU and NATO. This contrasts sharply with Russia's trajectory under Putin. Russia has moved towards greater authoritarianism, centralization of power, and a confrontational stance with the West. These diverging paths have created a widening chasm. What might have once been familial ties are now strained by fundamentally different visions of governance, society, and national destiny. The Kremlin's narrative of one people deliberately glosses over these crucial distinctions. It seeks to erase Ukraine's unique historical journey and its independent aspirations. For Ukrainians, this denial of their separate identity is deeply offensive. It is at the heart of the current conflict. They are fighting not just for territory, but for the right to define themselves. They fight for their language, their culture, and their choice to forge a future independent of Moscow's shadow. The echoes of a shared past cannot drown out the urgent cry for a distinct future. The unhealing wound, war from 2014 to a full-blown storm. The simmering tensions between Russia and a westward-looking Ukraine boiled over in 2014. Following Ukraine's Euromaidan revolution, which ousted a pro-Russian president, Moscow acted decisively. Russian forces, initially disguised as little green men, annexed the Crimean Peninsula. This blatant violation of international law sent shockwaves across the globe. Simultaneously, a conflict erupted in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region, Russian-backed separatists, fueled and armed by Moscow, declared people's republics. A brutal war began, claiming thousands of lives and displacing many more. For 8 years the Donbas conflict festered. It was a grinding war of attrition, punctuated by failed ceasefires and diplomatic efforts like the Minsk agreements. These accords, intended to bring peace, were fraught with difficulties and differing interpretations. Russia consistently denied its direct involvement, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Ukraine found itself fighting a proxy war on its own soil. The world watched, imposing sanctions on Russia, but unable to halt the bloodshed. This period was a grim foreshadowing of the even greater catastrophe to come. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This unprovoked act of aggression marked the largest conventional war in Europe since World War II. Moscow's stated goals were the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. These claims were widely dismissed as baseless propaganda, a cynical attempt to justify an illegal war. Russian forces attacked from the north, east, and south. Their initial aim was a swift capture of Kyiv and the overthrow of President Volodymyr Zelensky's democratically elected government. They expected a quick victory, but Russia gravely miscalculated. The Ukrainian people and their armed forces mounted a fierce and unified resistance. The initial Russian blitzkrieg faltered. Kyiv held firm. The world witnessed incredible bravery from ordinary Ukrainians defending their homes and their freedom. The invasion, intended to subjugate Ukraine, instead forged an even stronger sense of national unity. As of mid-2025, the war rages on. Significant portions of Ukrainian territory remain under Russian occupation. The human cost is staggering, a deep and unhealing wound on the European continent. The indomitable heart, Ukraine's unyielding resistance. Faced with the full might of the Russian military, Ukraine did not crumble. Instead, it demonstrated an extraordinary resilience that surprised many, not least the Kremlin. President Volodymyr Zelensky, a former actor, rose to the occasion. He became a symbol of defiance, rallying his nation and the world. His refusal to leave Kyiv in the war's early days, despite offers of evacuation, inspired his people. His nightly addresses became a source of strength and determination for a nation under siege. He embodied the spirit of a people refusing to surrender. This resistance was not confined to the military. Ordinary citizens played a crucial role. Many joined territorial defense units, taking up arms to protect their communities. Volunteers organized humanitarian aid, rescued civilians from combat zones, and documented Russian atrocities. The innovative use of technology, from commercial drones adapted for reconnaissance to sophisticated cyber defenses, became a hallmark of Ukraine's fight. Cities like Mariupol, Kharkiv, and Chernihiv, despite enduring horrific bombardment and siege, became symbols of Ukrainian defiance. Their suffering and resistance galvanized global support. The war has forged an unprecedented sense of national unity in Ukraine. Old regional and linguistic divides have faded in the face of a common enemy. The shared experience of resisting aggression has solidified a modern Ukrainian identity. This identity is rooted in democratic values, a yearning for freedom, and a profound attachment to their land. Ukrainians have shown the world their determination to choose their own future, free from external domination. Their fight is not just for territory, but for the very soul of their nation, for their right to exist as a sovereign people. Ukrainian forces, though often outgunned, have proven to be adaptable and highly motivated. They have inflicted heavy losses on the invading forces. They have conducted daring strikes deep into Russian-held territory, even targeting military assets within Russia itself. These actions, as President Zelensky noted, will undoubtedly be recorded in history books. They signify a nation not merely defending, but actively fighting back. The indomitable heart of Ukraine continues to beat strongly, a testament to the enduring power of a people determined to be free, even in the darkest of times. For sovereignty and soul, a nation's enduring stand in a world watching. As of June 2025, the conflict continues to exact a terrible toll. Tens of thousands, both military and civilian, have lost their lives. Millions of Ukrainians have been displaced, becoming refugees or internally displaced persons. Cities lie in ruins, and the economic devastation is immense. Russia controls roughly a fifth of Ukrainian territory. The war has devolved into a brutal war of attrition, with both sides entrenched. Peace talks have been sporadic and yielded little progress. The Kremlin shows few signs of genuinely seeking a negotiated settlement that respects Ukrainian sovereignty. The global response has been significant yet complex. Western nations, led by the United States and European Union, have imposed extensive sanctions on Russia. They have provided Ukraine with substantial military, financial, and humanitarian aid. This support has been crucial to Ukraine's ability to resist. The conflict is often framed as a battle between democracy and authoritarianism. Ukraine is seen as defending not only its own territory but also the principles of international law and national sovereignty. However, the long-term commitment of international partners remains a critical question as the war drags on. Ukraine's fight is a profound struggle for its very existence as a sovereign nation and for its distinct cultural identity. It is a fight against a historical pattern of Russian domination. The resilience and determination of the Ukrainian people have inspired the world. They have demonstrated that national identity cannot be easily extinguished by force. The desire for freedom and self-determination is a powerful motivator. The war has solidified Ukrainian nationhood in ways that decades of peace might not have. It has clarified what it means to be Ukrainian in the 21st century. The future remains uncertain. The path to a just and lasting peace is unclear. Yet, one thing is evident. Ukraine's spirit remains unbroken. The people of Ukraine continue their struggle for their land, their freedom, and their right to choose their own destiny. Their fight is a stark reminder that the quest for sovereignty and identity can demand immense sacrifices. The world watches, and history will judge how this critical chapter in European history unfolds. The echoes of Kyiv Russes now resonate with the sounds of a modern nation courageously defending its place in the world.